Spain in shock. Princess Leonor's forbidden love story revealed. Spain knows royal love stories. Spain expects dignity, loyalty, predictable romance. But today, everything feels wrong. A secret love. A forbidden name. A story that breaks every rule she was raised to obey. Yet, here is the twist. This isn't a reckless royal scandal. This is a love that refuses to die, even when the crown commands it to disappear. Princess Leonor, Spain's future queen, has spent her entire life preparing to lead, not to love. But in private, behind guarded walls, she loved someone the monarchy could never accept. Not because he was unworthy, but because he was too human. This story is not about rebellion. It is about a heart that dared to dream in a world that punishes emotion. And how a single revelation, whispered between two souls, brought Spain to its knees. It began years before the headlines, before the whispers, before the palace panic. It began in a moment so ordinary, no one would have believed it held the seeds of national controversy. Leonor met him when she wasn't wearing a title. She met him when she was just a girl, laughing, learning, discovering life without cameras. He didn't bow. He didn't stutter. He didn't treat her like royalty. He simply looked into her eyes and saw a person. That alone made him dangerous. Leonor never planned to fall in love. Her life was structured, scheduled, supervised. Even her emotions were managed, shaped into acceptable forms of nobility. But love has no patience for royal protocol. The first time she realized how deep her feelings were, she panicked. She wrote it down, not to confess, but to survive the intensity of what she felt. It wasn't a romantic fantasy. It was a confession of vulnerability. She wrote, "I don't know how to be a queen if I am losing myself." She sealed the paper, hid it away, and prayed no one would ever discover it. But love refuses to stay silent. He was brilliant, humble, ordinary in the eyes of society, extraordinary in the eyes of a girl trapped by destiny. He didn't belong to nobility, diplomacy, or monarchy. He belonged to the world she could never step into freely. A world where hearts make rules, not crowns. Their story unfolded slowly, cautiously, always in the shadow of consequences. There were stolen smiles in crowded rooms. Quick messages late at night. Moments of laughter that disappeared the second security stepped near. What drew Leonor to him wasn't rebellion. It was relief. Around him, she wasn't the future queen of Spain. She was a young woman discovering love for the first time. But in a monarchy, every heartbeat is political. Eventually, palace whispers began. Not from the press. From within. Advisors observed too closely. Security reported too much. Royal schedules were examined, rearranged, tightened. A relationship that felt pure started to feel criminal. The crown could tolerate mistakes, scandals, even crises. But not a romance they couldn't control. Spain's future queen was expected to marry power, not passion. Someone with lineage, diplomacy, alliances. Not someone who worked, struggled, lived among people who were not photographed by tabloids. The first confrontation came quietly. Leonor was called into a private room. A short meeting. A long silence. Questions disguised as concern. Warnings disguised as guidance. The message was clear. Royal women do not choose their hearts. Royal marriages are national strategies. Leonor listened. She nodded. She understood. But she didn't surrender. Instead, she began writing letters. Not love poems, not fantasies, but raw, desperate reflections of a young woman torn between duty and desire. In one letter, she wrote, "If I must sacrifice love to lead, I will lead without a heart." In another, "They tell me I was born for the crown. But I was not born to be alone." These letters were hidden, unsent, written in ink that trembled under pressure. They were her rebellion against silence. But love became harder to hide. When he looked at her, he didn't see a crown. He saw a girl trying to hold together two versions of herself. He didn't push her to choose. He simply stayed, quietly, consistently, believing that love should not be dangerous. But it was. Because in royal families, love is a liability. The moment that changed everything came at a private event, shielded from cameras, surrounded by nobles, diplomats, and watchful eyes. Leonor stood across the room, forced into polite conversation. He stood near the exit, ready to disappear the moment anyone noticed him. But they made a mistake. Their eyes met for too long. And someone powerful noticed. The quiet pressure became an order. Not a request. Not a suggestion. A command from people whose authority is never questioned. End it. Cut ties. Erase the problem. Sacrifice the private self for the public role. Leonor asked a single question. Must I destroy what makes me human to serve as queen? No one answered. They didn't need to. Her relationship wasn't ended with a conversation. It was ended with a strategy. A rearranged life. A new schedule. A wall of security so dense, no moment remained unobserved. He faded, not because he wanted to, but because the crown swallowed him. Spain never saw the heartbreak. The world never heard the cries. The palace never acknowledged the loss. But Leonor refused to forget. She kept writing. Her letters became darker, deeper, more honest. They weren't for him anymore. They were for her future self. A reminder of what she once risked, what she once felt, what she once almost chose. Time passed. Stories changed. Public life resumed. Spain celebrated its princess. Europe admired its future queen. But behind her smile, something remained unsolved. A love that didn't end in betrayal. A love that didn't fade into resentment. A love that wasn't destroyed by incompatibility. Only by destiny. People assume forbidden love stories are scandalous, wild, reckless. This one wasn't. It was tender, quiet, unavoidable, and tragic, not because it failed, but because it never had the chance to exist. There are rumors now, speculation, gossip disguised as journalism, questions disguised as curiosity, but the truth is simpler than any headline. Leonor didn't choose between two men. She chose between two versions of herself. The girl who loved freely. And the queen who must never love without permission. Sometimes, she still writes. Not to relive the past. But to remind herself she is more than a symbol. More than a monarchy. More than a headline. In one final letter, she wrote only one sentence. I loved him, not because I was allowed to, but because I could not stop. Spain believes it knows the life of its princess. Europe believes royalty is untouchable. But behind every crown is a heart that pays for privilege with silence. And sometimes, the greatest scandal is not what a princess does, but what she is forced to lose. Because the true tragedy of a forbidden love story is not the danger, not the secrecy, not the consequences. It is the realization that in the highest towers of power, the most forbidden thing is not rebellion, but sincerity. And somewhere in Spain, there are pages of ink, folded and hidden, holding the only truth she never dared to speak aloud.